been with Centrifuge for about 9 months now. I started off as an ambassador with them and quickly came into the role of governance facilitator, which means just growing out the governance side of things and growing out the DAO and encouraging and increasing participation in governance. So that's why we're here today. If you're not already familiar with Centrifuge, I'm sure many of you are familiar with Centrifuge. It is a DeFi lending platform. Let me go ahead and, okay, that's fine there. Yeah, and it's, the basic idea is that users can pool together their assets hey doggy, and they can be used, for example, DAI, and they can be used for lending for different companies. So that's the basic concept, and yeah, so that's Centrifuge. That's me, and I wanted to start with some very basic, general concepts here. And the first one I wanted to start with was just, as a project, is knowing your community, understanding, obviously what kind of project or DAO that you are. As I'm sure many of you know, and who are familiar with the space, there are many kind of DAOs out there. So there's general purpose DAOs, which are, you could say, are kind of like just investment DAOs, a collection of people with a common idea for something to invest in. There are public good DAOs, public goods, which can work for a more social or even political cause in some cases. And in the case of Centrifuge, the DAO is one aspect of the overall project. It's not just a collection of people with a multi-sig. It's actually a more complex DeFi project with many moving parts. So it's important to take this into account when considering how to handle governance for your project. An example here is with Centrifuge, for example. There are many complex moving parts: legal, credit analysis, underwriting, and so forth. So to be aware of this is to know that there is a certain limit to how much can be governed, how much should be governed, and how much we should encourage participation in certain areas. These things are still being figured out. This is a work in progress for our team and for many other teams, working to figure out which aspects of the protocol can, in fact, be governed. So, in most cases, these are changes to the protocol. Obviously, this is a substrate-based project, so that can include runtime upgrades. It can include where to use treasury funds, of course. But in the grand scheme of things, for this project, for example, for Centrifuge, as an example, there are certain aspects that cannot be handled by governance, and they needed to be handled by experts in the legal world, professional investors, people familiar with structured credit, and so forth. So the point here is that it's important to understand the limitations of each project when it comes to governance, what people can actually participate in, and to what extent. And of course, Centrifuge is the example that I'm using here because they are who I'm with. But a lot of these principles that I will be covering today can be applied to different projects with different structures and different purpose. So, okay. So, I think one good place to start is when it comes to getting the community involved, getting your community involved in governance, you want to really start with clear communication of proposals, well-defined ideas about, well, like I said, what can and cannot be governed. So the first part of this comes from where do these proposals start? And the majority of these will start in the off-chain governance process. So I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with the general Polkadot substrate governance process. But generally, it begins in a forum. So we have our own forum at Centrifuge. We'll post a proposal with a request for comments. And that will then move to an off-chain poll, which will then later go to an on-chain proposal, which could be used for treasury funds or different changes to the protocol, for example. So it's good to start here because with this, it's very important to add context to what is being proposed to make sure the community obviously first understands what is being proposed, to add enough detail while also making it simple enough for the community to understand. So there is a certain art to that. There is a certain method to doing that, and it requires observation by the team and clear articulation of these ideas by the person making the proposal. And of course, we want to give the community a chance to engage and a chance to learn and understand what's being proposed here. So in both cases, for the request for comments and the poll, there is a 7-day period where they can have their voices heard, make sure we have enough people engaged, enough people participating, and then it can move on to later stages of the governance process, for example, on-chain voting and so forth. So, sorry, I lost it here. 1 second. There we go. Sorry about that. So another aspect of this is how this communication happens, not only in the forum, but in other channels. A lot of this happens in our Discord, where a lot of our core community members spend their time and engage with the ambassadors and with the team. So within the relationship between the ambassadors and the team, the ambassadors are like the buffer. They're like the front line for engaging the community. So within your team, within a project, it's important for the team itself and the ambassadors to have clear communication amongst each other, so they can clearly communicate these ideas in Discord directly with community members, especially core community members, the ones who are the most engaged. In Centrifuge, this would be members who are responsible for asset origination, validators, for example, and really dedicated investors who are the most passionate about the project. Those are the ones you want to make sure you engage clearly and with the right information and in a timely fashion, of course. So one important thing to note here in governance is documentation. Letting letting the community understand how governance actually works. And I'm not sure how many of you have actually participated in governance and to what extent off-chain or on-chain, but it can be quite technical and quite complicated at times. What we've done actually, and shout out to Rana, one of our ambassadors who actually was responsible for this, we created a very simplified manual with pictures and very clear steps for how to actually engage this process and actually participate. We have a simplified version and a more detailed version that allows the community to see how this actually works. How many of you have actually tried using Polkadot.js to vote in any sort of on-chain proposal? Did you enjoy it? It's not that easy. It's a little bit technical. So it's our job, obviously, to make this documentation as simple as possible, given the current state of how this governance process works, and make sure that this process is as unintimidating as possible for our community members. And not only that, but making sure that it's in a place where it can be easily found, and it's not hidden somewhere obscurely in a long documentation page. So that is one key element. Another thing is to make people aware. When I say social networks, I'm also referring to Discord. It's my job and the job of the ambassadors and the team to make sure that people are being notified in the appropriate channels. We have our governance channels in Discord, we have Twitter, we have Telegram announcements. It's important to make sure that people are even aware that these proposals are being put forth and that they have the chance to actually, like I said, participate. This also requires a lot of clear communication between the team, the ambassadors, our social media manager, and those managing the Telegram and Discord. Like I said, the first step here is to provide that sort of coordination to make sure that everybody's on the same page and everyone can be notified, everyone in the community can be notified in a timely fashion to actually go and vote. Now, I think this is where things get a little more interesting. This is something that we at Centrifuge have been discussing for some time, and I think it's a really, really important one to consider. And that is to simplify the process as much as possible. One big aspect of that is to create a more simplified user interface and user experience, UI, UX. And there are a few different options out there. The ones pictured here are just a few examples. There are many projects in the space, some of them here actually, who are already using these tools. Subsquare is a user interface that also works as a mobile app, which allows for notifications for new governance proposals. PokeAssembly is obviously already used on Polkadot, and Web3 Alerts is a tool used to for what it sounds like, which is to give alerts to new proposals and new information coming into the voting process. The website for those is subsquare.io, PokeAssembly, and web3alert.io, I believe, if you want to go check those out later. But as we grow as a community, these tools will become more and more important. There's a certain core community that is able to go through the documentation, able to go through all these detailed steps, and they can handle it. They can handle Polkadot.js. They can handle the off-chain and on-chain voting process as it currently exists. But I do believe that as we continue to grow, and as other projects continue to grow, it will become much more important for the casual investor, you could say, in order for them to feel like a part of this. It's important to make this as simple and as user-friendly as possible. All right, so here's another good one that we are in the process of working on with Centrifuge. For example, this has already been implemented on Kusama, and the idea here is whether or not to use NFTs or POAPs as incentives for voting. There's a lot of discussion about this amongst our team about whether how much this would help the process, how much this would incentivize people. Obviously, everybody loves NFTs. We all know that. But the counter argument here was to avoid the gamification of the process, to avoid cheapening the process, or inviting the wrong people to come in and participate in governance simply because they want to earn a nice NFT. I mean, they are pretty cool NFTs, but we do want to encourage the community to participate in a way that's authentic as possible, and we do want to reduce that gamification. But this is a learning process, something we're experimenting with. It has shown good results on Kusama, for example. Participation definitely increased on Kusama after the NFTs as incentives were implemented. We actually ourselves just put through a off-chain proposal in the forum to whether or not to introduce NFTs as incentives, and of course, predictably, the results were overwhelmingly yes. So, given everyone's love and passion for NFTs, I think it was pretty obvious that people would vote yes for that one. So, but yeah, to really stress the point though, it's going to be an experiment here. NFTs as incentives, I think they can work as a sort of gateway drug, which can help at least bring people in and introduce them to the process, get them familiar with off-chain and on-chain voting. But in the end, we're going to see how it works, because, I mean, this might not be a program that we keep forever. We want people to really get involved, like I said, in a more authentic way that is long-lasting and demonstrates a real understanding of what the project is all about, and the whole process there. So this is a little bit more abstract, but I think it's also important to, not only as a team or as a group of ambassadors or as a core community, but in general to demonstrate the bigger picture. I think one big reason that we're all drawn, I mean, I know I am at least, but one big reason that we're all drawn to the Polkadot ecosystem and to projects like Centrifuge and others is because I do believe that we're building something that's meaningful. It's being built in earnest, and it's not something being done for quick financial gain. We actually are building for the future of Web3 in a serious way, and I think we can all agree on that, and that's like I said, why we're here. So I think it's important to, in whichever way we have the chance, this could be through marketing, it could be through the social networks, it could be through more engagement, just to remind the community of why we're doing this, why it's important, and why decentralization is important. Governance is obviously a big aspect of that. And as we simplify the process, as the process matures, I think it'll be easier for people to focus on the bigger picture. And as the tech becomes more and more integrated with the web, with Web3, it'll become more philosophically motivated, and less about just just trying to make some good gains. Obviously, those things are not mutually exclusive. You can be an investor and understand the philosophy of the project at the same time. But I think reminding people of this message can also act as a good motivator when it comes to getting involved in governance and understanding the importance of decentralization. I mean, I think that's why a lot of us are here in the first place, especially in the Polkadot ecosystem. So, using Centrifuge as an example again, we have, like I said, a really great core community. Many of those are asset originators, validators, and core investors, along with the ambassadors in the team. And especially in these early stages, when these communities are relatively small, it's important to directly engage with those who have shown the most interest and the most passion towards the project. This can involve directly communicating with them, reaching out to them through Discord and Telegram and other channels, emailing them. We also host monthly community calls and governance calls. So we have essentially two community calls per month. One is focused on governance, and we're always doing our best to engage these core members, giving them a voice, a chance to have their voice heard, and making them feel empowered, giving them the chance to speak on these calls, to ask questions, and to feel a direct connection with the team. I think in crypto it's important to remember that these are not top-down structures. These are collective communities, and feeling that direct engagement, that direct connection with the team, feeling like your voice is equal, is important, and it's important to maintain that connection and maintain that ethos, I believe. And of course, as we all continue to grow our communities and our projects, this will become easier as time goes on. Let me get through this here. All right, so really quickly, I'll just cover this quickly here. Going off chain. Now that can help because that means a little bit less technical jargon to go through. Polkadot.js, we all love it, but we all are also a little intimidated by it sometimes. We recently have had a couple proposals here that are no longer really using the on-chain voting process. For example, we're going to start to decentralize the pool onboarding process, just as an example, and that will involve a more informal off-chain vote that will be less technical for the average user. So we might see more and more of this off-chain voting as time goes on, and I think that will also make things less technical for the average user. Yeah. All right. So this is a big one as well. It's this council and delegation. Again, as we grow, as we build bigger and bigger communities, not every user has time to go through the whole governance process or the technical know-how or the motivation. We have to acknowledge that reality. So delegation will become increasingly important, giving users the option to easily delegate their vote to a user or a council member with more expertise who they can trust their vote with. Okay, so wrapping up here. As we all know, this is a learning process. Whether you're a general purpose DAO, whether you're a DeFi project, we're all figuring out how this works. 4 years ago, when I first got into the space, there was no very good MetaMask option. There was no really great payment processor. And it's pretty clear that in the next few years, in the next several years, this process will become more and more simplified. People will become more and more aware of how this works. And it'll be easier to engage users who are already familiar with this technology. We're all learning together, and yeah, I'm looking forward to the future.